Well, hello and welcome to episode 187 of Drink the Movies. I am Brian here as always with Michaela. And Michaela, a couple weeks ago, we talked about a very famous film for its anniversary. It was Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. And a lot of people will say that that is Alfred Hitchcock's best movie. But if you went out onto the street right now and you said, hey, you guy or gal, tell me something about Alfred Hitchcock, they're going to go, that's the guy that made Psycho.
They are going to say that's the guy that makes Psycho because this is actually the film he should be most known for. So, do you remember watching Psycho for the first time?
I don't really remember watching Psycho for the first time, and to be quite honest, I don't really remember a lot about Psycho, which we're going to get into when we talk about the film. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I've seen like dozens and dozens of times, right? I mean, I saw it, I know for sure I saw it, growing up and on TV and in college and film class and, through my adulthood. I've seen this movie several times, but there's a bit of a black hole that I go into when it comes to all things Psycho, which is kind of neat. So every time I watch it, it's like a bit of a different experience. But what about you? Do you remember your first Psycho experience?
I do. I do. And it was 1990 because Psycho 4 came out. Okay.
Oh, yes,
And
yes, yes, it
Janet
did.
Leigh, right. It was 30 years later. Janet Leigh, who was famous in my mind at the time for being Vivian Lee's daughter from Gone with the Wind and a
Mm.
bunch of other stuff, right? Janet Leigh is in this as Marion Crane, as the famous Marion Crane in the shower scene. And she did like a, I don't know, like a interview um from like Turner Classic Film, where she's sitting in front of a fireplace and she's talking about the movie and she's talking about how people fainted, people walked out of the theater, that Alfred
Yes.
Hitchcock's film, while it's not that graphic, it was incredibly terrifying. And I remember my dad sitting down with me, of course, it's 1990, so I am 9. And he was like,
Mhm.
Michaela, this is one of the scariest movies that you're ever going to see. And I was like, it's in black and white. How scary can it be? Um, but we watched it and it was, it was 1990. So it was on Turner Classic Films because, again, there's not a ton of blood. There's not a ton of nudity or, I mean, for the violence that is portrayed in the film, it's done in such a way that you could show it to a 9-year-old, apparently. Great.
Apparently you could, yeah. It definitely, in terms of the gore and shock value, it hits differently in 1990 than it did in 1960. That is for sure. But we're going to talk about all that. But before we talk about all that, we're going to need to get this week's cocktail going. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll grab some milk, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's drink.
So, Brian, when coming up with this cocktail and scouring the internet, I definitely needed to see a couple of things. I wanted to see something that was understated. I wanted to see something that would look great in black and white. I wanted to see something that had some milk in it because that's the only actual drink that we see in the entire film is Norman Bates with his
Milk,
sandwiches and
milk and
milk, right?
sandwiches. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. I mean, and it sounds so wholesome and pure. He does such a great job of making it sound like a small banquet that they're having in this back parlor as he's,
I
losing
don't
his
know.
mind
It's a
over
red
Janet
flag for me.
Leigh.
If you offer me milk, it's probably a red flag to
Yeah, it's
be
probably not a good thing.
to be
But
honest, to be
we
honest.
but we were able to find from the Drunken Moogle the Bates special, which does all of these things. And of course, because we need something that's kind of an old woman drink. Why not add butterscotch and cinnamon schnapps in there for good measure? You know?
That's right. Get some schnapps in there. You'll be good to go just for mother's sake. Yeah. So apparently this cocktail is based off of a cocktail that is known as Mother's Milk, and so I looked that up to see what that was, what the difference was. There's about 1,500 different versions of that, and a lot of them just had cinnamon and butterscotch schnapps in it. But basically, what it is, it's a cocktail that's formed on this basis of having milk in it. It's kind of like a White Russian, I guess, in that stance. And this one, it goes together really simply. And then the Drunken Moogle here, they had the addition of some grenadine on top, which gives it this bloodish aura there on top. It's the blood dropping on the shower pan
Mm.
there, I guess. Spoiler warning. So let's go ahead and put this together, and then we can talk about it, Michaela. So into a shaker tin goes 1 ounce of milk. use whatever you want, I guess. Skim milk, whole milk doesn't really specify. So whatever you have, go for that. I think I used a 2% in mine. 1 ounce of cinnamon schnapps and 1 ounce of butterscotch schnapps. Give that a shake with the ice. That's pretty important because you want a little bit of that ice melt to thin out that milk just a touch. Go ahead and strain that into a glass, and then you can put on 2 drops of grenadine, says the recipe, and it's going to give it that blood-like effect on top. So, Michaela, we each made this up at our respective homes. What did you think about this one?
So I actually found this kind of delicious. I used whole milk because I don't even know if they had semi-skimmed in 1960, and I was trying to be
Fair
authentic,
point. Fair point.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
I don't know
look,
if they
I
had
really like.
pasteurization in 1960, did they?
Oh,
I
they
don't know.
did. Come
Oh,
on, it
okay.
was only 64 years ago. It's kind of a shame, actually, that I didn't do the math and save this for next Halloween season. But it's fine. 64 years. It's still amazing. This film, but I found this to be really good. You were making fun of me when you were asking if we had any butterscotch schnapps,
Yes.
because you were
Hmm.
pretty sure that we only needed one bottle. And I don't know what you're talking about because I find butterscotch schnapps delicious.
Mm.
It's real good. Now it's got the spiciness of the cinnamon. It's definitely sweet enough. I mean, it's an ounce of the butterscotch schnapps, and that's a lot. I feel like that's a lot. So if you don't want it super sweet, you could probably make this like a 3/4 ounce cinnamon, 3/4 ounce butterscotch, or even half an ounce, and then make up for a little bit
Hmm.
of extra milk. You're definitely going to want to shake it to make sure that it collates, coagulates, or whatever the word is, a little bit better. Mixes. There's another word for
Mixes.
it. Mixes
Coagulate
better.
is what you do not want your milk to do. On a side note, so don't listen to Michaela there. Butterscotch schnapps is gross. It smells gross. It doesn't taste that bad, to be honest. But you open that bottle and it like hits you. It's like a butterscotch semi truck just barrels out of the bottle and smacks you in the face. It's
Oh,
it's
come on.
it's pretty
Do you
intense. It's
remember
pretty
that
intense.
butterscotch Scandy, the
Yeah,
Werther's
Werther's
Originals?
originals, they're delicious, but butterscotch schnapps, no, no. I'm glad that you had some of this for me to borrow, so I didn't have to get a bottle of it. But this was pretty good. I took a sip of it and I'm like, oh, that's tasty. It tastes like some sort of like candy, like a cinnamon toast crunch or something, right? And I took a sip of it. I'm like, that's pretty good. And then I took a second sip of it and I said, that's pretty good. I'm done drinking this now. I definitely don't need 3 ounces of this drink. I think that this probably serves better as a shot potentially. Not that you should be doing shots of milk-based drinks probably, but yeah, it was. I thought it was really good, but like I said, after 2 drinks, I was completely done drinking it. Like I didn't like want to have any more of it. I don't know if it's because it was so like sugary sweet from the
Yeah.
the two layers of the schnapps in there. The grenadine doesn't really do anything other than appearance. I did the 2 drops as what the recipe called for, which didn't give me hardly any effect at all. I ended up having to use like 8, and I was using just like
Yeah.
Rose's grenadine. It wasn't anything like super fancy or anything like that. So um your mileage may vary there on that, but this was pretty good. It's not something I'm probably ever going to revisit. I don't know what occasion I'd have to make it, but it's definitely fun, and it kind of opens the door to other variants, and that's something we've done before, because we did the White Russian obviously for like the Big Lebowski, and now you're like, oh, all these other like schnapp flavors and things like that you can play around with, and really kind of tweak it to make it more seasonal. You could do if you had like an apple vodka and cinnamon schnapps. That would
Mm,
be really nice, like fall, like White Russian kind of variant, maybe here.
sure.
Now that we're getting
Yeah.
into spooky season, that could be pretty good. Or you could use like the pumpkin pie, Bailey's or something like that in your in this kind of riff on this. But this was good. This was good. Give it a try. It looks cool in the glass, and it's perfect for getting into the Bates Motel there, as it were.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I mean, again, I thought it was a bit sweet. And it's the drops of grenadine are just a really nice effect. If you're gonna do something spooky and scary, if you want to make a vampire cocktail, this is great for that. Something like that.
Mhm.
It's good. It's just spooky enough. And it yet seems so innocent. Milk, right?
Milk.
It wouldn't hurt a fly.
It does a body good. It would not hurt a fly. That's right. So yeah, so go ahead and mix that up, the bait special from Drunken Moogle. Let's go. We'll make up another one, Michaela, because now I have butterscotch schnapps for days, and what else am I going to use it for? So let's do that. Let's mix up another drink. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Psycho.
Here we have a quiet little motel, tucked away off the main highway. and as you see, perfectly harmless looking, when in fact, it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
Spoiler warning for Psycho. If you've not seen this film, we're going to talk all about it, and it's quite a big, punchy ending. So if you've not seen it, we're going to absolutely spoil it for you. So my recommendation is for you to press pause, go fix yourself up a Bate special drink, watch the film. It's out on Netflix right now, as of this recording anyway. And you can come back and we can chat about all the things, because it will absolutely spoil it for you if we talk about it before you've seen it. I'm just warning you. You have been warned. Dun dun.
Oh,
Dun
oh my,
dun.
oh my gosh, yeah. The music is as scary as the rest of the things in the movie for sure. And
That's true.
yeah, definitely spoiler warning. But there's something about Psycho, and it's that everyone who is tuned in with any sort of popular culture pretty much knows it at this point, because this was released in 1960, so it has been quite a long time running here. Directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and it stars Janet Leigh as Marion Crane and Anthony Perkins as our motel manager, Norman Bates. This was based off of a book, Michaela, a book by the same name, written by Robert Bloch in 1959, which is good, which is kind of what Alfred Hitchcock did. He took these kind of stories, these mystery kind of things, and turned them in to his own playground to make a film off of. And this was pretty well received, at least in terms of the Academy Award. It was nominated for four of those. So black and white art direction, set decoration, black and white cinematography. Supporting actress for Janet Leigh, and Alfred Hitchcock gets nominated for Best Director.
Yeah. So here's something that I found interesting, because I was doing research on this and I did not realize it was based on a book. I don't know why I didn't realize that, but the book came out in 1959 and this film came out in 1960. They moved real fast in the old times and the before times. They were like, look, we're going to do this. Maybe it's because this film has like zero like sci-fi, like CGI. It's got zero special effects except for the models of the dead folk, right? And we're going to talk about all that.
Right.
Which is amazing. Still probably the best that I've ever seen, and 64 years on, so good. Definitely don't understand why Hitchcock only got a nomination for Best Director, because this film, some of the shots are just completely amazing to me. There are things that I've seen in other films since then that definitely just stole it right out of Hitchcock's playbook. Some of the cinematography is just inspired to me. Thought it was so great. And Janet Leigh is great as your pseudo main character, right? This whole film is really like almost a psychological profile of both her and Norman Bates, right? Like what inspired her to make the decisions that she made, and do the things that she did that ultimately led to her demise. And then, of course, all of the psychosis around the Norman Bates character.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. You mentioned the quick turnaround here from the book being written in 1959, the film coming out in 1960 there. I guess, by this point, Alfred Hitchcock had been nominated for four Academy Awards for Best Director. This would be his fifth and I believe final nomination there in that category. Never won, which is kind of surprising there. But you have a pretty the budget's easy to get when you're Alfred Hitchcock, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at this point for sure. And they get this put together, and it creates some of the most iconic visual images in all of film history. So it's not surprising there that it gets those cinematography and art and set decoration noms there. So let's talk about the film a little bit, Michaela. I mentioned at the top that there's very little of this film that I remember year to year, and it's something that I watch probably every couple of years, pretty much through my entire adulthood, several times before that. But this film gets started off. We are going to wake up in bed with Marion and Sam, right? Sam Loomis, played by John Gavin there in bed. And they're going to have a bit of a chat. Seems like they've had a nice afternoon, but everything is not rosy there. It looks like Marion Crane is, looking to take this relationship to the next step. But Sam confesses, says, Marion, I love you and all. I want to get married and all that stuff. But, I have a lot of debts and things, and I don't want to saddle you with that. So, until I get that sorted, we can't get married. And that's going to be the setup for what gets Marion Crane on the run.
Yeah. Interesting side note here. Their relationship is, I mean, again, this is a film that came out in 1960, and she's in like a bra and like pants, and they're laying in bed, and they're kind of having this pillow talk moment. It's incredibly adult for being so not
Hmm.
adult compared to
Yes.
some of the things that we see today. Um,
Yeah, in the film, I was blacklisted and not shown in a lot of places because that was against the the content and conduct rules of the day, right? You couldn't have people that were unmarried sharing a bed in film. That was definitely happening. For her to just be, just in her bra and things was definitely not something that was, smiled upon in the day for sure. So, yeah, right off the bat, this film is already controversial, getting things started here.
yeah, for sure. But I love the chemistry between Marion and Sam. He is he aged well. Like this whole scene ages really well because you definitely get the idea that they want to be together. Sam says, I've got all these things happening, I've got all these debts, but I are you thinking of ending it? And she's like, yes, no, maybe. It's really hard to, they can't quite keep their hands off each other. So that's really interesting. And they were having lunch. They were having this tryst at lunchtime. She had to go back to her real estate boss and type things up. And in walks this guy who's just bought his daughter a house for like $40,000 in cash. And $40,000 is a lot of money now. $40,000 in 1960. Okay. That
Yeah.
translates to $417,000, 341 and 50 cents today. Okay. That's a ton of money. And he decides he's going to pay this in cash. Marion is having a headache. She says, hey, I'll take that money. I'll drop it off at the bank. And then I'm going to go home because I have this splitting headache. And everybody in the office just kind of believes her. And we even kind of believe her. We think, that's interesting. And then immediately we see the cut of the next scene where she's again in a bra, getting ready, packing a suitcase, heading out of town. And we're like, ooh,
Hmm.
intrigue.
Yeah, puts that envelope of cash into her suitcase, and we say, "Oh, that's not great. Marion is up to no good. Up to no good." Um, yeah, I just like a $500,000. You give that to the secretary and be like, here, deal with this. I might take a few more precautions there, real estate company. But yeah, she is going to go on the run, basically, right? She thinks this is the answer to all their problems, going to steal this money, and then she and Sam are going to be able to get married, right? She'll get the debt settled, and that will be that. So she heads off on the run. She doesn't make it very far. She drives almost right into her boss. They're crossing the street, and at that point, he knows something is up because that money has not been deposited. She's supposed to be home with a headache, and here she is in the car. That is looking sus for sure. And she is not going to be the smoothest of criminals, right? She's going to go. There's a cop that ends up kind of following her and pulling her over. Or no, she's asleep on the side of the road
Yeah.
there. And he comes up to her, and she is not acting suspicious at all that anything is wrong. I love kind of like this cop because the whole time he's like, seriously, lady, this is your story. You need to get your facts together, and they're going to have another run in later when she just randomly goes in and buys a new car. She's already digging into that $40,000 pretty quickly in an effort to evade the law, looking the most guilty of all time.
Right. Oh yeah. She's like, am I acting strangely? And he's like, yeah, you are
Yes, you
actually.
are. Yes,
And
you
she's
are.
like, well, am I free to go? And he's like, I guess so. I'm free to follow you. And so that's exactly what he does. Um, Never have I seen a transaction, especially in a used car situation, last as quick as this does. It's like 3 minutes. She walks in. She's like, can you take my car? Here's $700. I'm leaving. We got this beautiful, haunting soundtrack. And that is one of the things that
Hmm.
I used to say that the first musical score that really did me in was for Silence of the Lambs. I take everything back that I said there because I was 9 when I saw this. And this score is insane. It's so good. It's so haunting. It's terrifying. Anytime she gets back in the car to like start driving, you get the strings, the dun 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 dun, dun. And it's just so like haunting, and it chases her. Like it's like the music is
Hmm.
chasing her. This cop is chasing her. The law is going to start chasing her any minute. It's so tense. And it ends up being really weighing on her. She leaves, she starts thinking about all these situations in her head where once they find out the money's not been deposited, and the cop, and I guess she was trying to get a new car because she wanted to evade the police where she was in Phoenix, but the cop just saw that. So not the smartest of moves, but I mean, I don't think Marion really had a plan here. And that's why
Mhm.
the close-ups of her face as all of these thoughts are reeling in her mind, and the way she's thinking, and when her eyes light up and when she'll smile, just thinking these thoughts to herself. It was really, to me, just an exercise in brilliant acting in a very subtle way. And it's probably one of the reasons why she got the nomination, which is really, really deserved. Because not a lot happens other than having her do that in a car, right? We get the
Mhm.
conversation she has at the beginning of the film, the conversation she has in the middle when it begins to rain, and she stops at a hotel, and runs into the very sweet, very boyish, very innocent looking Norman Bates.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I really like about the lead up here is kind of the cinematography, the way they did the car driving sections, as you've got like the projection through the windows, and it looks really really great, especially as the rain's starting to come in and you're seeing those reflections like into her face there as she's driving, and yeah, ends up having to pull off the side of the road to this hotel, which is something I believe that the officer had said, right? Don't just pull off on the side of the road, stop at a hotel. Yeah, what are you what are you doing? So she is going to do that, right? She basically just like jumps out of the car, leaving the car running, leaving the door open, goes inside to the hotel, and she's kind of looking around because no one is there. Looks up, there is the very iconic house kind of up on the hill, and she sees a couple people milling about in there, and some voices before Norman Bates spills out of the house and comes down to check her in, right? She does. She ends up using a fake name there on the guest registry, and gets that. She's going to go and get her luggage, or yes, Norman's going to go and get her luggage, and gets her checked into suite number one, right next to the office there. She'll be close by if she needs anything, right? She's only planning to stay, just for the night, going to set off early in the morning, but, Norman is a helpful lad, so he gets her in, kind of shows her the room, and says, if you haven't had any dinner, the weather is too bad, don't go into town. That's a terrible idea. Just stay right here. Have some milk and sandwiches. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? And nothing goes wrong really. He goes up. He's gonna come get her with an umbrella, is what he says. But then she overhears this huge argument between him and his mother. She basically calls Marion a tramp and says, she wants to get in your pants, boy, and that's disgusting, and I'm not
Mm.
okay with it.
Hmm.
And he's like, she's harmless. She's a lady who's given us money, and this hotel. They keep talking about it, right? They moved the highway, so this hotel is very much off the beaten path. It used to make money and now it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. Norman takes a lot of pride. He still changes the sheets. He still tries to keep everything clean, even when they make $0 from this. So he's trying to reason with this woman who just isn't having it at all. So Norman shows up with sandwiches and milk for them to eat in the office.
That's
And
right.
they end up going to this back parlor. The parlor is very like mid-century modern. It's beautiful, except for all the dead things that are hanging on the walls. And that's when we learn that Norman Bates loves to stuff animals, namely birds. He doesn't like beasts. He says, "I
Hmm.
don't want
Hmm.
chimps. I don't want tigers. They look weird, but birds look very different." And he knows. He learned how to do all this with like a needle and thread and some sawdust. That sounds real serial killery, and this is why, right? Like this.
Well, it's a cheap hobby, right? You just go and
Yeah,
find a
sure,
dead
yeah.
animal, and get some
And
sawdust. That's pretty cheap.
Marion
Needle and
says a
thread, and
man
that's
needs a hobby. That's
a
what
man
she says
needs
to him.
a man needs a hobby. Absolutely. So yeah. So he's got this creepy hobby. He's already given you milk and sandwiches, which is kind of a creepy meal for someone to give you at a hotel, for sure. And then Marion's going to say, okay, Norman, is nice meeting you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and retire next door and get myself settled in. Right. We get some scenes there of Norman doing some peeping there. Kind of moves that picture and is able to look the into the hotel room there of Marion, and you think that's kind of where it's going to end, right? Norman has come off as nice, but something very off about Norman, right? And you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's just this weird guy, right? He's gonna put her in there. He's going to peep in on her, and maybe that's going to be where it ends. And we're then going to go and spend some time with Marion, who is trying to, I guess, kind of wrap her head around what she's done for the day, right? She's trying to figure out like where she can hide this money to make sure that it doesn't go missing, and she ends up putting it on the bedside table there, kind of wrapped up in a newspaper. I don't know why you couldn't have just left it in your suitcase there, but whatever Marion feels like she's got to do, and then she's going to get ready to retire for the night. So she's going to go in, get in a nice hot shower. It's been a long day of thievery and running from the law. So you get a shower to wind down for the end of the day, but that's going to be your last day, Marion. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because she kind of comes to terms with what she's done. Apparently, the story is that she's decided to drive back to Phoenix in the morning, and not go through with this at all. Try and explain herself. I didn't see that at all. So maybe I missed it. I was like, man, okay.
Well, she does take like an accounting of the money that she had spent of the $40,000. So maybe that was
Sure. Maybe
that
that
was
was
there
the
in the
indication
back
that
of her mind. Yeah, that
yeah,
we were
like
supposed to take
I
away
should
from that.
probably,
Yeah.
yeah, I should get my car back. Maybe, I don't know, $700. But she takes a shower and, she looks amazing. This shower scene is awesome because she's very naked and you very much don't see anything that you wouldn't see in 1960. I don't know how they did it. It's pretty awesome. She's like, the water's rushing down. You get this really, like sense that it's maybe going to be kind of this peep show thing because Norman is watching her through the through his
Through the
little
wall,
peephole.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
you're that's where you think this is going, and then all of a sudden there's a shot of the shower curtain that is not clear. It's like this plastic shower curtain, so you can sort of see through it. And someone enters her room, someone who has like I don't know, like a bun, who looks like they're an old lady, with a giant knife. And we get the most iconic scene of like all thrillers of all time.
Yeah. The most iconic scene and maybe all of movies for sure. You see the shadow come in there on the shower curtain, which is still just as unnerving today as it was in 1960. Like I can't even imagine how unnerving it was there, like having seen this for the first time, like in the whole world. But yeah, you see that shadowy figure, you see the hand and the knife, you get the strings there coming in on the score, just going berserk. It's very chilling. It's very raises the hairs on your arm for sure when you're watching this. And Marion Crane is going to be left there slumped over the shower, and we're going to kind of see then an argument happening up at the Bates house, right? You
Right.
hear Mother, you hear Norman kind of having this bickering battle back and forth, and then Norman shows up into the hotel room there to see that Marion has indeed been murdered. What is young Norman to do other than to get that body and the suitcase, all of that stuff out of there, puts it in the trunk of the car, and then takes that car and drives it into, I don't know, some kind of swamp or pond or something like that, which is
Yeah.
a really kind of cool visual. It kind of drives it into it, and the car kind of starts to sink and then it stops, and Norman looks very concerned for just a moment, and then it finally kind of settles on down. And yeah, that is it for Marion. So what are we going to do then in the second half of the film is try to figure this out, right? So Marion's sister, she's like, hey, I haven't heard from Marion for a while. Let me go check in with Sam. That knucklehead. I'm gonna go talk to him. And I like Lila. She's like Lila is played by Vera Miles, and she gets there to talk to Sam, and she's basically like, Sam, I don't like you. Where's my sister?
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, if this is none of my business, she needs to tell me that it's none of my business because it's been a week and I haven't heard from her, and that's totally not like her. And Sam is like, yeah, she's not here, man. No, this ain't good. And this private investigator has been following Lila. His name is Arbogast, which is the strangest name I've ever heard in my life. Didn't they call him Jones? They probably
Yeah,
could have. I don't know. Good on you,
Milton
Hitchcock.
Arbogast.
Arbogast. But he is like this slimy looking dude. I don't like him at all. But he's saying that he's been hired by the guy who had $40,000 in cash to go retrieve the money. And we get
Hmm.
the feeling when we first meet him that he is just not a good person. He like totally like sexually harasses Marion, like sits on her desk. He's just total slimeball. And apparently that made you a lot of money in 1960. It probably still does. But this guy Arbogast is on the trail looking for Marion, and he has stopped at every hotel, between Phoenix and wherever they're at. And he finally makes a stop at the Bates Motel, and he talks to Norman Bates. And Norman is, very nervous. He's stuttering. At first he says no one's been here in weeks. Then he's like, oh yeah, her. And then he's like, oh yeah, I've talked to her at length. And it doesn't add up. And they examine the guest register and they're like, yep, this is her handwriting. She definitely was here. And it just, Norman keeps saying, my mom is upstairs or in the other house. I need to give her meds. She's not well. And he's so protective of his mother. Arbogast is like, I don't know. You're saying she doesn't, she can't do this, but I really need to speak to her. And so he tries to enter the house to speak to her. Norman doesn't want her to, but he does it anyway. And that is a mistake. You shouldn't enter anybody else's home because they might come out and kill you. And that's exactly what happens. We see the shadowy figure assault him at the top of these stairs, stabs him to death. It looks very much like the shadowy figure that stabbed poor Marion in the shower a million times. And so right now we have a crazy grandma on our hands. We have a psychotic mom who thinks that everyone wants to bang her son, and she needs to kill them all. I don't know.
Needs to get rid of all of them. Yeah, Arbogast goes into the house and meets his untimely fate there. He gets stabbed at the top of the stairs, and then kind of the second, I guess, maybe like most iconic like shot of this is him falling down the stairs as the camera is kind of following in close on him, and you're seeing the background warp. I'm not 100% sure how they constructed that shot. That's pretty neat for sure, and we'll talk about kind of the shot construction and recreation of that here as we get into the end of the film. So Arbogast doesn't his investigation is going to end there, right? So that's going to leave Lila and Sam to finish up the investigation, right? They're kind of keeping tabs on Arbogast. They know that he was at this hotel, and they're like, "Oh, this is probably where she was. Let's go check that out. We'll pose as a married couple. We'll go in. We'll see if we can get some information and figure out if she was staying there, right? And get a look at her room. Maybe that'll have some clues as to what happened to her." So that's what they do, right? They go and they check into the hotel, and Norman gets them set up in a room. It's the furthest one away from the office, right? Of course, but they're gonna do a little bit of investigation, right? They sneak into the room, right? So they can't find any of the money or it's like any of the indication that she had been there, but they know that she'd been there from Arbogast kind of investigation through that. So they say, maybe there's some clues up in the house. Maybe that's where she ended up being. So Sam is going to kind of run interference, right? He calls Norman into the office and starts having a little bit of a chat with him about that, leaving Lila to go up into the house. Stop breaking into people's houses. That's a bad idea. For sure. And it's not even going to be great for Lila, but she does stumble upon something that's very interesting.
Yeah, so she goes up to the room, and it's interesting because we hear some conflicting stories, right? Sam talks to the local sheriff. The local sheriff is like, "Oh, we know Norman. That his mother's been dead for 10 years. Like, there was this weird like murder suicide situation." She died of strychnine poison. She poisoned herself and her lover when her lover was going to go back to his wife. So she's dead. There is no mom. And they're like, well, we just saw her. So that's weird. And we've all, as audience members, have seen her basically murder two people. So these stories aren't adding up. It is so chilling when Lila goes into like the upstairs into the mom's bedroom. We see this bed that looks like it hasn't been slept in years. However, there's this big dip in the bed. So obviously someone's been laying there forever. There's just a lot of old like things and then stuffed animals everywhere. And it's just really creepy. But there is no sign of her. So Lila's going down the stairs and she sees that Norman Bates is running up the stairs because Norman has knocked Sam unconscious. You can tell he is frantic. He's trying to cover up all of his mom's crimes, right? He's like, oh my gosh, I had to hide, Marion's body in this swamp. I had to hide this other guy that now they're coming to look for. And it's like, oh, this is so bad. This is really bad. So he knocks Sam unconscious. He runs up to find Lila. Lila kind of hides behind the stairs and sees that there's a cellar. And we, as the audience members, have heard Norman try and express to his mom that she needs to hide in the cellar for a couple days. He carries her down there. She's like very unhappy about this and saying horrible things to him, but he does it. And so we think that that Lila's gonna find Mrs. Bates like hanging out in the cellar, like I don't know, eating popcorn or something.
Having milk and
chained to a
sandwiches.
wall or something. At least that's what right? That's what we're thinking.
Yeah, we're thinking it's not going to be good, and what we're thinking is not even as bad as it was, because she gets down there and kind of turns that chair around, and there's a mother Bates, right? Dead, has been dead for apparently 10 years according to the story. Then and about then Norman busts in, and he's got like the wig on and stuff, wielding the knife, and we think that Lila is now next in line to be done for. But luckily Sam has sprung back and is there and is able to kind of step in, intervene there and subdue Norman, and that's going to obviously give the police then time to come and wrap this thing up. So we still don't really know at this point where Marion ended up, but we're going to kind of figure that out. And kind of the final scenes then is just at this police station. And I really like this. It's kind of like a round table of doctors and police officers just kind of discussing Norman Bates and trying to define, I guess, what Norman Bates has become. And then you get the creepiest and most awesome part of the movie for me. There is kind of this internal monologue. It's just like a voiceover that Anthony Perkins is doing as Norman Bates, sitting kind of in this I don't know, it's like a padded room or cell kind of a thing, talking and talking about how he protected mother, and that everything was going to be okay, because they'd never believed that Norman would do it, because Norman wouldn't even hurt a fly. You see a little fly walking around on his hand. It's very creepy. It's very, very unnerving. Anthony Perkins, very unnerving. If you would have ran across him like at a restaurant, like after you'd seen this, I'd been like, I'm gonna pick somewhere else to go. And that's kind of where the film ends. Then they're pulling the car up out of the river, which is a really cool shot, or out of that pond or whatever. But what do you think about the ending here? Now that Norman's been caught.
So I really love that they explain like all of the depravity of what's happened in the psychosis. This is what this film really became like a true crime thriller, like love of mine, because of the way that Dr. Richmond explains, right? He killed his mother 10 years ago out of like jealousy. They had this very strange, almost like incestuous relationship. And so when his mother found another man, he couldn't take it. Norman killed her, killed the lover. He was able to pass that off as a murder suicide, but he somehow kept his mother's mummified body like alive in his mind, and it created sort of an alternate personality. And now every time a woman or anybody shows up that Norman is attracted to, he feels that his mother would feel that same amount of jealousy. And so it's very again, it's very Hitchcockian, and we only say that because of this film, right? It's so creepy, and the scene where you have, like what you said, the overlay of the mother's body onto Norman Bates's face as he kind of smiles and looks up at the camera, and then we see the car being, kind of retrieved and pulled out of the swamp with the score in the background. It is absolutely chilling to this day. It still haunts me. It's so well put together, and I love how we are strung along by these bits of things that we're seeing, and we've put together a completely different narrative. My dad tells me when he saw this film, not in the theater, I guess it was in the mid 60s by the time he got to see it, but he said that he was thoroughly convinced that the mother was real, that they had been hiding in the house for whatever reason, that Norman and his mom had killed the lover together maybe, and that it was going to be one of those sorts of things. He did not believe until the very end that it was Norman Bates all along, and it was so well done that even throughout the whole thing, if you know it, you kind of can pick it out, but he was shocked. And just that um surprise ending, that twist that was so well built on the psychological aspects of it, just really makes this a complete masterpiece to me to watch from a
Yeah.
thriller perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. But yeah, seeing it for the first time, and even like knowing, the mother is dead and that it's Norman, like you still like look for like indications, and I mean you can kind of pick up on them, but it's so well camouflaged. It's really amazing. I wanted to make mention of here. I don't know if this was from the book, from Robert Bloch's book there, or if this was from Alfred Hitchcock, or if this was from the scriptwriter Joseph Stefano, but I really love the way they handle um, kind of like the analysis of Norman at the end, right? Like the cops are very quick to just write him off as kind of this like weird, like sexual deviant, but the doctors are like, no, it's not that at all. Like you're not even like beginning to like comprehend like how this is like a mental thing. And I thought that was especially for 1960, it was probably like mind blowing that people would have just been like, oh, this is just a weird dude that dresses like his mom. No, it's more of this psychological alternate personality kind of disorder that he's having. And so I really liked and appreciated that. I don't know if it was appreciated at the time, but definitely do now. And then yeah, they do such a good job of masking the fact that it's his mother. I guess they used three different actresses to kind of do the voice, and like blended the voices in, so you never could get like a real like good read on what
Mm-hmm.
mother was supposed to sound like in there. I don't know if they were also using like Anthony Perkins like recording of that dialogue as well, kind of in there to mask that as much as possible. But yeah, this is one of the all-time greats. So if you go onto your web browser right now and you type in, what are the best, scary movies, or like Halloween centric movies, or horror stories and things like that, this is for sure going to be on this list. And if you type in what are the best movies of all time, this movie is probably going to be on a lot of those lists as well. Psycho kind of set the standard for what a psychological thriller could be, and you see, just the fingerprints of this all over basically every horror film and psychological film to this day.
Yeah, absolutely true. And it spawned kind of it spawned quite a few other films. So Psycho 2 came out in like
Yes.
1982.
Yes. Yes,
Psycho
it did.
3 came out. I skipped all of those, by the way, and I went directly into Psycho 4 because of the
Right.
psychological piece. And Psycho 4 came out in 1990. I think it was an HBO special, to be honest.
Mm,
It was called The Beginning, and it really focused on Norman Bates as growing up. He gets released from multiple, I don't know, they never take him to jail. They always take him to an insane asylum because they feel that he's sick and he can be rehabilitated.
mhm.
And so he has been out, and he is now like 50, he's older. And he is on a radio show being interviewed about his relationship with his mom, and talks about all of the things that happened psychologically that created this character, which I loved. Like, it's a bad movie. It's not well done. If you're going to see it, I'm sorry, but I loved the psychological piece of it, and I really loved because the original Psycho left you wanting so much more as a listener, as a watcher, as a viewer. I
Mhm.
wanted to know more. They had alluded in the kind of roundtable discussion that you talked about that there were other missing people, that there were at least two that they knew about that they could never find. What else was going to be in that swamp that they dragged up? It was
Right.
so
Mhm.
great. And maybe all of that is in Psycho 2 and 3. I didn't watch any of those. But I think
No one should
that
watch those.
no one should watch it. But that's what I mean. I just loved this film for that reason, and I'm so glad we finally got to cover it. Anthony Perkins is just amazing, and they did try to remake this. Gus Van Sant did I think 1998 uh,
Yeah, he didn't.
Psycho with
He didn't try. He actually did. Yeah, and I want to talk about that here in a second.
yeah.
Psycho 2, 2, 3, and 4. So they came out in 1983, 1986, and 1990. Now those dates are important to remember, because Alfred Hitchcock said, "No way, no how are you making sequels to Psycho, right? One and done. Leave it alone. Leave it alone." Alfred Hitchcock dies in 1980. Psycho 2 comes out in 1983. So there you go. That's why those exist. The Gus Van Sant remake, it was a literal shot for shot remake, which is kind of interesting, right? It stars Vince Vaughn and Anne Hesh, Julianne Moore are in it. Viggo Mortensen is Sam Loomis in there. It is neat from the standpoint of like an exercise in movie making. But it seems like that's something that you do, like if you're in like film school, like that seems like
Mm.
a film school assignment, like right, like here's like 20 minutes of Psycho, go recreate this shot for shot, and that would be a good learning experience because Alfred Hitchcock thought of things that you'll never think of. So go ahead and try to recreate this, and maybe that'll get the creative juices flowing. But I love it for this sense. Well, Gus Van Sant is a good director, right? He's done a lot of good films. Not this one, not a good film. But the fact that he tricked someone into giving him $60 million to do it just for like a fun like exercise for himself, that's amazing. Good on you, Gus. I like that. I
Good
like
on
that.
you, Gus. I just need
So
someone to give me $60 million and I'll recreate, I don't
that's
know.
right. He only gave them back $37 million. So I don't know if Gus is going to get another shot at that. So good on you. But there was, I am a big fan of the Bates Motel, which is a television series that starred Vera Farmiga and Freddie Highmore there as Mrs. Bates and Norman Bates. Really like that. Thought that was really good, really well done, really interesting, kind of like this origin story, which I guess is what the Psycho Part 4 was. So yeah, so you can check that out too if you want more of this Norman Bates story. But yeah, this is one of the best for sure, and I'm glad we got to talk about it today, Michaela.
Yeah, me too. I actually was supposed to watch Psycho for film school, the 1998 version, and I refused because I was like, what's the point? So I actually have not seen it. So I'm glad I got confirmation from you that it is shot for shot exactly the same. So I don't have to see it now because I've seen it. I saw the original, and that's the best one. Now, the Bates Motel, I am excited to hear from you that you thought that it was worthy of your time because, again, I know very well that Psycho 4, the beginning, not a great film, but I really like that psychological piece to it. And
Mhm.
so if you feel, and you've never steered me wrong, but if you feel that it's good, I will go back and look at those. I love Vera Farmiga, so that intrigues me. And
Yeah,
it's only a couple of
yeah,
seasons,
yeah.
right?
I think it only ended up going for 4 seasons, but it basically kind of plays up through to the end. It was on from 2013 to 2017. So yeah, go check that out. I haven't watched it since it was first on, so I might have to go back and do that. That's kind of piquing my interest to get back into that world here now as we make our way through Halloween season. So that is going to wrap it up for Psycho. I think I can't handle anybody more butterscotch schnapps. That's too much for the stomach. All this murder and butterscotch in there. So let's go ahead and cut this one off here, Michaela. So thank you so much for listening to Psycho. We definitely appreciate it. We want to know what you think about Psycho. Was Psycho 4 the best one? Should we make more remakes of Psycho? What did you think about Bates Motel? And what do you think about the Bates special cocktail? We want to see pictures of yours because it is cool looking. We want to know what kind of other riffs on White Russians you end up making this time of year. We want to know all that stuff. You can send us your thoughts, comments, feedback, pictures, all that stuff on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to get some bonus content, extra episodes, cocktail chats, hangouts, all that sort of stuff, you can find that on our Patreon. It is patreon.com/Drink the Movies. Had a really fun hangout there just a couple weeks ago. We're going to be getting another spooky movie in the books here sometime this month as we make our way to Halloween, no doubt. So check that out. You can go to the website, www.drinkthemovies.com, for links to all that stuff and pictures of our cocktails, recipes, episode recaps, all that stuff. So, Michaela, if they've done all that stuff, right? They sent us a picture of their cocktail. They told us about the Norman Bates of it all. Where can they make sure that they are subscribed to our next film, which is not going to be nearly as spooky, but it might bring a tear to Michaela's eye as we go into a Pixar for for Halloween.
Yeah, for sure. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are distributed and supported. Your Rectangle, the phone that you have right now, whether it's a iPhone or Android, I guarantee you have the ability to find us. You have found us if you're hearing this. So if you're liking what you're hearing, press subscribe. We would love that. We do a couple drops a week. If you're really liking what you're hearing, I guarantee there's like a star button that you can press. We want the most stars. So if there's 5, put them put him as 5. That'd be amazing. It really helps us get all the Drink the Movie stuff out there. And we can't do what we do without your amazing listenership. So thanks so much for that. We are eternally grateful.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap it up for Psycho. Hopefully, you're having a nice spooky season out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
the
the
Movies. They'll say Michaela wouldn't even hurt a fly.
A boy's best friend is his mother.